Good Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk a little Cavs, but we're going to start by talking Cleveland Browns. Yesterday, the Browns introduced Jim Schwartz as the new defensive coordinator. Schwartz, who got his start in the Bill Belichick era of the Browns, talked about what he saw on tape from last year's Browns defense.
I probably didn't do as much, but I looked at enough games, I think, that I had at least a little opinion of what happened. But you know, I was in Tennessee last year, so we'll keep an open mind, we'll keep an open slate, and you know, what we'll do and what players will play will really be dependent on how they do in the offseason program and what they look like in OTAs and how we develop in training camp. It's not going to be based on what happened last year.
And with that, let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, what'd you think? I know you listened to the Schwartz press conference. What'd you think of the hire and what you heard?
Adult in the room. That's what I got, right? Like, I've said this on this show a couple of times. Everybody's going to get wrapped up in their favorite name for defensive coordinator hire, but it's more about just getting somebody competent, right? Because this defense has Myles Garrett. This defense has 3 really good corners. This defense is a really promising linebacker. You don't need a genius. You need competence. And Jim Schwartz is the epitome of competence. I would compare the change on defense to this. Joe Woods, when that defense was working, that was a McLaren, right? It was a fine Italian sports car. It was fast and furious. But what's the problem with the McLaren? It's not practical to go. You can't put your groceries in it. One thing breaks down on it, the whole thing's in the shop, right? Like you can't, it's not robust. It's not a very robust machine. It's not very practical. What Jim Schwartz is a Ford F-150. He is a nice, reliable, durable pickup truck. No, you're not winning any races with it. You're not going to be best in class in all of these categories with it. And nobody's going to turn their head and go, oh, my gosh, look at that when you come by with the Ford F-150. But you know what you're going to be? On your way to where you're supposed to be, right? It is a very reliable truck, and it's a good truck. You know, it's not the best one, but it is a good one. And you don't have to worry about maintenance because he's been around so long that if something goes wrong with that truck, right? Ford F-150 been around so long, there is some tutorial to tell you what's wrong and how to fix it, right? With Jim Schwartz, that's what you're getting. Very experienced. He's been around forever. He's ran this defense forever. If something goes wrong, he's probably can counter it. He knows how to fix it. Joe Woods, you know, the brakes go off on that McLaren. He like, I got to take this to the specialist, and then we out for 3 weeks. Like, that was the issue this year in the last 3 years. That's the difference, right? It's not going to reach those highs of Joe Woods. Like when Joe Woods' defense was like firing, it looked incredible. Like we would look like the 85 Bears sometimes. But then most of the time it's in the shop, right? And that's what we're trying to avoid. Just consistent, competent defensive play. It don't got to be the greatest. We don't got to be top 5 in all these crazy metrics. But if we're in the top 15, the top 10, hey, that's great. That's where we need to be.
All right, let's take a look. So this is Kevin Stefanski's EPA, expected points added per play over expectation in a graph. This is, you see, the first year when made the playoffs and won the playoff game, really good, exceeded expectations by quite a bit. Last year, a little bit below. This year, closer to expectations. All right, as a point of reference, here is what the same graph looks like for Sean Payton, which is it's kind of up, down, all over the middle. And you see he did have back-to-back really bad years in 14 and 15. I guess what I'm getting at is what you got offensively from Kevin Stefanski really wasn't that bad. It was what you should expect.
I mean, like, it's crazy. Like, a lot of people are, like, turning around saying this is terrible offense now. And, like, we were there for the first half of the season when we were, like, legitimately saying, I can't believe the offense is this good right now. That is incredible. Jacoby Brissett looks like this and that. So, you know, it's funny how the opinions sway based on recency bias. But, yeah, with Kevin, it's been kind of this thing where he hasn't had consistent quarterback play. The 1 year where it's all the way up there, what year was that? 2020? That's the 1 year he had the same quarterback for the whole season, right? 2021, Baker Mayfield in and out the lineup because of injuries. And then 2022, we know what happened here, where it was one guy for 11 games and another guy for 6 games. If he has consistency, which he will have this year, if he has the same quarterback for the whole year, or at least gets to plan for the same quarterback for the whole year, because last year that wasn't the case. He had to plan for somebody for some period of time. Now it's going to be a situation where, okay, you can do more specialized stuff. Maybe you don't have to be as base and vanilla about these things, and maybe you can expand so you're not as predictable. And I think that's what we'll see. He's a proven good offensive mind. Like everywhere he's been, the offenses have gotten better. And I expect that to continue to happen with him.
All right. I know you've addressed this on Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Take us through kind of the coaching staff and how you think they did, how they performed. If you want to call them grades, that's fine.
Yeah. So I went through and I graded these guys, and basically, you finish 7 and 10, so it's not going to be A's across the board, regardless of what I feel like your potential is or how good you are at the job. So it wasn't like a glowing review of these guys, but what it was like, okay, let's look and diagnose where things went wrong for this team. Second half of the year, run game kind of faltered. O-line injuries piled up, and then you had the quarterback change, which kind of changed the whole offense. And you could see that, there were some issues with the quarterback position where it was Deshaun reads a play like this, but Kevin is used to quarterbacks reading plays like 1-2, you know what I mean? Where Deshaun goes 1-2, back 1, maybe 3. And that's what you want. But when you're preparing for guys who can't do that, it kind of shakes things off in your offense. So they got a lot of information there. Defensively, we know what it was. The replacement's already here. There's no need to harp on that. In special teams, I didn't feel like they did a great job there. So, I think the highest grade I ended up getting was like a C, maybe to the offense, but that's about it.
Yeah. And, 7 and 10, it isn't what was expected, without question. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hi, this is Rico. Most fans want Stefanski to give up play calling. In my opinion, the hiring of Schwartz now will let Stefanski just focus solely on the offensive side of the ball. Schwartz is basically a head coach and doesn't need Stefanski to tell him how to do things. My point is, now since he hired Schwartz, do you think he'll be inclined to delegate the play calling duties to AVP, or does he have a built-in reason as to why he will continue on calling plays? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I don't think he ever intended to give up play calling. I think, and again, I think you got to put yourself in Kevin Stefanski's position here. The reason he got the head coaching job is because of his offense and the way he calls a game. And the offense has been pretty good.
Yeah, and that on top of, if you're an organization, you want consistency, right? There's a reason why Mike Tomlin calls all the plays on defense in Pittsburgh. There's a reason why when it comes to New England, Bill Belichick calls the defense, no matter who's the defensive coordinator. And that's about consistency more than it's anything, because coordinators come in and out all the time, right? Especially offensive coordinators. So let's say you do let AVP call the plays and they get used to how AVP calls a game, and then AVP has a great year and gets hired away somewhere. Then what you going to do for next year? You know what I mean? Like that's the thing, right? Like we want to delegate these responsibilities to other guys, but when you delegate a responsibility like play calling to somebody else, you're also leaving your team vulnerable to that guy getting hired away. So it's not really a good strategy when it comes to longevity. It's not really a great strategy when it comes to, consistency with this, right? Like that's why they want to keep things consistent. And that's why Kevin's going to be the one calling the plays. And the offense is largely going to be Kevin Stefanski's offense, because that's the guy that cannot be hired from underneath you. That's why a lot of teams will hire an offensive head coach, because they want consistency on that side of the ball. And they know if they bring in this guy who's a good offensive coordinator, we're going to have that offense and we're going to be able to build around that. And that's just how this thing works. And, people are going to complain about Kevin's play calls. All Kevin has to do is win some games next year, then nobody cares who calls the plays.
Yep, winning cures all ills in football and most team sports. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Talk a little bit about Andrew Berry as the GM. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I have a question. This is Steve in South Carolina, Browns fan. Here's what I don't get. I don't have the statistics, but it seems to me that Kevin Stefanski calling the plays doesn't focus on the stars. In other words, we have a running back that ran the ball the last game 12 times. He's one of the best in the NFL. Shouldn't he run it like 22 times, 25 times? We have a great receiver in number 2. How many times did he get the ball? I think Stefanski is a poor offensive coordinator. I think he tries to outsmart himself. Don't outsmart yourself. Give the ball to the guys that make the frickin' plays. And that's my point. Hey, you guys have a great show. Go Browns. Love you guys. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, we talked about this in the last segment. I don't really have an issue with the play calling. I kind of understand. The thing I'd say is Nick Chubb had the third most carries in the NFL behind Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs, who pretty much were run into the ground by their respective teams. So it's not like Nick Chubb didn't get the ball a lot.
Yeah, and then we also have to realize, like, the situation they were in was, like, what was important after they were pretty much out of the playoff run wasn't let's get Nick Chubb the rushing title and let's run him into the ground running the football in games in which he's not going to really make a difference whether this team makes the playoffs or not, because that's already kind of been determined. It was, okay, what's going to help this team make the playoffs next year? Improve quarterback play. What do we need to know about Deshaun Watson in this offense? Everything. So you wanted data on that, right? That doesn't mean that you don't play to win the games, but that means that you also, you're going to prioritize maybe less touches for Nick Chubb and maybe more throws for Deshaun Watson, just so you can have some information on what he likes, what he doesn't like. And I think that's what they kind of did. And then as far as like running the ball 12 times in that last Pittsburgh game, some people might consider that's 12 too many. Why would, like, some people would even want you not to play Nick Chubb in that game, right? I wouldn't be one of those people, but, like, I'm not going to complain about how many carries the guy got in the game that only could determine whether we would go 7-10 versus 8-9. You know what I mean? Like, that just wasn't worth it to run Nick Chubb 22 times there, because Nick Chubb's going to be very important for this team next year. Kevin is not going to be somebody who's going to spam the ball to a certain player. But also, I think fans should think about the fact that other teams are also trying to take away those players, right? It's not just what Kevin wants to do. It's also what the defense is doing to the offense. And, yeah, you could force the ball to Amari Cooper all the time, but you're going to be throwing into double, triple coverages. And we saw Deshaun Watson try to force the ball to Amari Cooper a couple of times this year through some interceptions. We weren't like, hey, glad he was thinking about getting the ball to Amari Cooper then, right? Like, so it's all results-based. And if it's going to be results-based, the only result that's actually going to matter is whether they win or lose on Sundays. But if we're talking about this from like a data standpoint, I think the play calling has been fairly balanced. It's been balanced for the last 3 years.
Yeah, I have no issue with this play calling. The game management, different conversation for a different day. But his play calling hadn't been bad. All right. Let's say, and again, I know you addressed this on Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. What do you think of the decisions Andrew Berry has made across the 3 years he's been the general manager?
When you look at it in total, he's been pretty good. And I pointed this out. You can't find a single one of his colleagues to not gush about him, right? Like it's one thing when people are like, hey, yeah, I like Andrew. I'm happy for him. People go out the way to like, no, Andrew's really good. I love working with Andrew. I wanted to work with them again. Like he seems to be a type of person that's very respected with his colleagues. And from my personal experience, those are the people who tend to be really good at their jobs, or are the ones that people who also work those jobs feel like, hey, this dude's kind of good at that job, right? But when you look at his decisions, I mean, like I could only really come with like a couple of gripes with him. But trading out of the second round this year, that's a legitimate gripe I think people can have with him. I don't think that was the greatest decision at the time, and I don't think that ended up being a great decision there. Maybe I think sometimes he might rely more on his list than what he feels like he needs instinctually. I think some of the issues in defensive tackle you can point to him having a problem with, but also you have to look at like he hasn't had the greatest pick selection. Like John Dorsey got here and he had the number 1 and 4th overall picks in one draft. Like Andrew Berry hasn't had a top 5 pick yet, right? I think he had one top 10 pick. That was Jed Wills, who ended up being a starting left tackle. So it's not like a home run, but you hit a double there with that. You look at Greg Newsome, who looks like he's primed to become a Pro Bowl corner any day here. And then this year he got Martin Emerson in the 3rd round, and he might be better than Greg Newsome. You know what I mean? Like it's been very good selections from this team. You haven't hit home runs, but you've hit a lot of doubles, a lot of singles, and gotten on base a lot. And again, for a fan base that really wants to be like Pittsburgh, like Baltimore and Pittsburgh don't hit home runs all the time in their draft. But you know what they do hit? Singles and doubles, right? That's why they're able to stay at a consistent level of good, because they keep hitting singles and doubles. And the Browns have hit a lot of singles and doubles. Maybe the home runs coming sooner or later, or maybe the home runs on the roster just needs the right coach to develop them, right? That might be something, right? Perrion Winfrey might be really good with a different coach there. Or maybe JOK might blossom into a home run with that. But that's what it's been with AB. A lot of solid decisions. I mean, that's just the draft pick stuff, the free agent stuff. You could point to John Johnson. That might be the one thing where it's not going great, and maybe Austin Hooper. But then you look at the trades, the salary cap stuff, the guys he's re-signed. This has been a very good job by Andrew Berry. And the gripes are kind of minor when you look at everything else he's done in totality.
All right, this is from NFL.com. Weighing fifth-year options for 2020 NFL Draft's first-round selections. Jedrick Wills exercise the option? They say yes. Browns' offensive line has operated as a reliable, cohesive unit since Wills' arrival in 2020. Wills, player Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski should want to keep in tow as a steady, solid tackle who has played at least 90% of the team's offensive snaps in each of the last seasons. And again, the one thing working against Jed Wills with the fan base is he was the 10th overall selection. He has been, solid is probably a really good term. He has been a solid left tackle, which if you have that, there's your single or double.
That's what usually, the 10th overall pick is. Like, sometimes you hit a home run with the 10th pick, but a lot of times you either get guys who are like slightly busts or like just kind of like average. That's pretty much what Jed Wills is like. Jed Wills has been exactly as advertised. I've seen people try to change the scouting report on him. Jed Wills coming out of college was the pro-ready guy who had high floor, low ceiling. But the reason you wanted to get Jed Wills if you were the Browns was because we felt like we needed to get an offensive lineman who was ready to play right now. That's why they went with him over Tristan Wirfs, who was seen as kind of like a experimental tackle guard prospect. Like people were all over the place where he get put. Ended up being a really great tackle, but Browns fans did not want to take that chance, and I don't think the Browns wanted to take that chance in 2020, so they played it safe and got Jed Wills. And Jed's been exactly as advertised. He was going to be a good tackle off the box, really good pass cover guy, pass protection guy, and then not that great at run blocking. And that's kind of been exactly who he's been since he's entered the league. But, I guess people were expecting more or want more or were used to more with Joe Thomas here. But Jed's kind of been fine there. And you can argue that he probably outperformed Jed Wills with like the selection of Greg Newsome or even Martin Emerson in the 3rd round, because those guys look to outperform their draft position more than Jed. But Jed's been about at what you would expect for the 10th pick in the draft.
All right, before we go to break, NFL interior defensive linemen who will be free agents and their Pro Football Focus ranking. Number 1, Javon Hargraves of the Eagles is overall 4th ranked I'm guessing he probably won't get to free agency. Number 2, Deron Payne, Commanders, 11th overall. He might not. Number 3, Dalvin Tomlinson, 15th. Number 4, Draymond Jones of the Broncos, ranked 20th. Number 5 is Zach Allen of the Cardinals, ranked 23rd. And number 6, Sheldon Rankins of the Jets, overall PFF ranking of 48. Browns probably need a couple defensive tackles. Any of those guys pique your interest in keeping in mind salary cap, ability to sign, and fit?
Yeah, I mean, like, Deron Payne's always going to be interesting in that conversation. I think you can also point to somebody like Dalvin Tomlinson. He might make sense, but I don't know if he makes so much sense in the wide 9. And then there's guys like who aren't available yet, who could become available. Like, DeForest Buckner's been one that I've been talking about a lot, where he's not really going to be under contract for the Colts. So they're going to have to make a move one way or the other. And that means that you could trade for him and restructure him and get him under the cap. So there's going to be some different options available. I would say that they're still going to prioritize length. And you might still get slender DTs, but I also feel like they're going to be better coached.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns Coverage and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Hear from Jim Schwartz, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled, Unfiltered Browns Coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show. Long-time viewer, long-time caller. Just a quick comment and just kind of a good, funny, feel-good kind of story. After watching the Jim Schwartz press conference, man, they should do a 30 for 30 on what could have been, right? If you look at all them coaches that he named off in his press conference that were in Cleveland when he was here, geez, what a coaching tree from back then. Look at all them coaches now. That would be a great TV for Browns fans, younger generation, Just wanted to hear your thoughts. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, I think they did a documentary on it. You had Nick Saban, you had Bill Belichick, you had Eric Mangini, Thomas Dimitroff for a while was the GM of the Falcons. Those were guys that were like interns when I was covering the Browns in the early 90s.
Yeah, it was a Cleveland 95. The NFL Network did a documentary. It was like, oh, look at all these coaches you could have had in Cleveland. The team never moved.
Yeah.
Love that for you Browns fans. Play that before the home game on Thursday night. That's great, It like, funny enough, I think it was made right before Haslam bought the team, so they're like, the shores of change might happen with Jimmy Haslam buying the team, and I'm just like, all right. Like, but it is out there. Like, the Cleveland 95 documentary really does go over that. I mean, you had Bill Belichick in the building. Not just in the building. He was the head coach.
You want salt in the wounds, go back and listen to Jim Schwartz being asked about that staff before he won the Super Bowl with the Eagles, and he said, oh, we were on track to do that in Cleveland. If the franchise didn't move, we'd have done that in Cleveland. I about put my fist
the pick
through
for Ray
the...
Lewis was already there.
Yeah. I about put my fist through the set when I saw that. All right. Jim Schwartz was asked. Jim Schwartz was asked about being back in Cleveland yesterday. Here's what he had to say about his fond memories of Cleveland.
You want a coach where fans are passionate. I've been very fortunate in Philadelphia. Okay, check. We had that. Detroit, yes. Buffalo. I've had some great stops that way. Tennessee. So you embrace that part of it, and I think that's that's an important part of our process, and that's an important part of what the organization goes through. And I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to the fans here to get this right and to reward them, because I'll forget most plays of the Super Bowl that I was with the Eagles. I'll forget just about every play in that game. But what I won't forget is that parade afterwards. It's indelible in my mind. I'll never forget it. And in my mind, there's only one place that would outdo that parade in Philadelphia. And we're here right now. So I'm really excited about getting to work.
And again, got to start here in Cleveland. Was here for 3 years. Was an unpaid intern as well. So he's been in that building. He knows what he knows what the fan base is.
I mean, he was in Detroit for a number of years. I mean, it's a very similar fan base to us. And then Philly, which is like, we think we rough, but like Philly's like angrier Cleveland, which if you believe that happens, you know what I mean? So like he has been around some fan bases. Again, he's been in the league forever. So he's really seen it all. Again, like I don't think there's much that can phase him. There's not much that's new here. And even better, he's had so much experience that if something phases Kevin Stefanski or any of the younger coaches on the staff, he can help them through it. Like that's one of the benefits of hiring a guy with this much experience who's already kind of done it, right? So he's not like trying to take your job. So you can kind of take his advice at face value and not think he's trying to like angle something out of you. It's a good thing overall for the coaching staff, and I think it's a good hire because of that.
Yeah, I would agree. This is also really interesting. So, busted coverages. Browns busted coverages under Joe Woods, 2020 to 2022, 47. That was the most in the NFL. Eagles busted coverages under Jim Schwartz when he was the defensive coordinator, 2016 to 2020. So, additional years, 40, fifth fewest in the NFL. And that was the thing this year in particular that was frustrating is they kept having them. He couldn't figure out how to stop it.
Mm-hmm. It's that sports car analogy again. They kept breaking down, right? Like, it's real nice when it works. Kept breaking down. Jim Schwartz has proven that, this is a car that's not going to break down on you if you drive it for a while.
All right, let's take a look more at the Eagles' defenses under Jim Schwartz from 2016 to 2020. Overall grade 8th, pass rush grade 1st, EPA play allowed 7th, success rate allowed 5th, EPA pass allowed 8th, pass success rate allowed 6th, EPA run allowed 3rd, run success rate 2nd. Those two, I'm sure, grabbed the Browns' attention. Scoring drive percentage allowed 5th. So we've talked about, it doesn't need to be a top 5 defense. Most of the times, by the advanced metrics in Philadelphia, in his 4 seasons, they were a top 5 defense.
Mm-hmm. They have very good talent there, right? Like the Browns aren't going to be able to accumulate that level of interior talent or defensive line talent. Even though they got Myles Garrett, they had a very solid line in those years. So might not be able to accumulate that level of talent to have that level of a defense in the interior in year one. But we'll see who they get, who they sign, what they get with that. But I expect this defense to be, again, competent, if not good. This is a very, very talented roster. Like, it blows my mind that it was this bad with this roster. And I think that's what really did it in for Joe Woods. It's like, dog, how is the roster this good and you're not good at all? And there would be times where the roster would literally carry the defense. So it's just, these guys are good. You want to put them in position to be successful and continue to do that. And I think that's what Jim Schwartz is going to do. And we'll see what those numbers look like. Again, you could have a top 5 defense with Myles Garrett on. That's not crazy. I think even Joe Woods, you can make the argument, had one for like a segment of time with when Myles Garrett was really operating at a high level in 2021. So, it's right there in front of them. Very talented. I don't know if it's as talented as those Philadelphia defenses, but it's not far away.
All right, before we go to break, Jim Schwartz with a little story about some of his early days with the Browns with Bill Belichick as the head coach.
I had just been hired like a couple days before, and I'm picking up guys at the airport, shuttling them back, and I'm checking off names at lunch and all that stuff. And my flight doesn't go back until 9 o'clock on Friday night. So it's a ghost town here. There is nobody here. This whole building is empty. Everybody's gone fishing for the summer. But I got nothing else to do, so I'm here. And back then they used to have kitchens that had food. And, I sort of root through. It's the middle of the afternoon. And and I root through, and there's some turkey, and I'd make a nice little turkey sandwich, use the rest of the turkey, and I get my little crackers and have my drink, and I'm sitting there now. The whole day I hadn't seen a soul. There was not one person in the building the entire day. It's just me. Put my little pictures up on my little cubicle area. I didn't even have an office. It was like a desk. And just as I'm biting into this turkey sandwich, in comes Bill. And it was obvious he had been working the whole day, but he was holed up in his office. And I said, and I'd barely even met him. I'm just having my turkey sandwich, and he's, just gives it, hey, how's it going? Well, I'm fine, coach. So I'm doing this, and he goes, opens the refrigerator and starts opening the drawers and looking, and he looks over at me, he goes, hey, you seen the turkey? And I was like, I just used the last of it, coach. And, and he just sort of gives me this, this bad look and just shakes his head. And
Quincy, I have seen that Bill Belichick look at press conferences.
And you notice Jim Schwartz never worked with Bill Belichick again after that year. Like, he didn't make the move. Like, he made the move to Baltimore, and then he was with Jeff Fisher for like a very long time. Like, you notice Bill wasn't like, hey man, come back. I bet he was sandwich boy. Like, I bet that's what Bill called him. This is turkey sandwich boy. Like, man, ate the turkey. I know. Like, you ever come home and you're expecting something to be in the fridge, and then like your kids or somebody ate it? Imagine that, but it's not even your kid, somebody that you love unconditionally. It's some dude named Jim that ate your turkey. Dog, I would be irate. He was like, man, that was my last. That's the kind of thing that makes you irrationally angry, is when you're hungry and the thing you've been thinking about, and it's not like he was thinking about anything great. He was thinking about sliced deli turkey from probably Giant Eagle. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even like a gourmet. So he had to convince himself, oh yeah, I'm ready for this turkey. I'm out here. And then he goes to the fridge, and the sad little consolation prize turkey ain't even in there. You know he went, because he watches this film on the treadmill. He was on that treadmill just talking, Bill, don't fire him, man. Oh, he's just a kid. But oh man, he ate the turkey. Like, I bet he was thinking about that all year. Every time Jim Schwartz did anything, all year, he was like, who's that? Who gave me that report? Turkey boy? Nah.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. A couple trade targets for the Browns as well. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, my name is Nolan. I'm a big Browns fan, and I had a question about wide receiver fit. As we have problems with our wide receiver core for like a wide receiver 3 or possibly 2. I was thinking of a Brandon Cooks trade, of how we can get somebody to fill in that third spot. We have David Bell, Michael Woods, and Dalen Ball in our team too. What do you think that could be a good, valuable trade to get him? Thank you. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, Cooks is a guy that had some success with Deshaun Watson. He wants out, doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. If you get him for, I don't know, 3rd, 4th round pick, it's worth. I don't think he's going to get a 1st or 2nd round pick for Brandon Cooks.
It changes because, like, 1 year Amari Cooper goes for a 5th round pick.
Right.
But Randy Moss went for like a 4th, and he was like 27. Brandon Cooks at 29. I don't think the market is going to be hot enough for him, even though there are some things that would indicate that the wide receiver market might be hot, right? Where the draft isn't that great, the free agency class isn't that great. So the trade market might heat up, but I don't know how many teams are looking for wide receivers and how many wide receivers are going to make themselves available, right? Mike Evans could become available. DeAndre Hopkins could become available. There's a number of guys around the league that are very high profile that could become available. And if those guys do, that brings down the price of somebody like Brandon Cooks. So I think realistically, like, you should be able to get Brandon Cooks. Like, if we're talking about like trade value wise, like a fifth would be cutting it, but like you probably should be able to get him for like a couple sixes and maybe a fifth in the future. If you really want to do it that way, or maybe a 6 this year and a 5 next year, that should be able to do it for him. It's really about taking on that contract. And if you're the Texans, you don't want to have his contract on board anymore. So I think that's more or less where this thing's headed. Brandon Cooks is the ultimate mercenary wide receiver. Like, he is the best wide receiver to never stay on the team for more than 3 years. Like, he's been very good everywhere he's gone, and he has been everywhere. Like, it is wild that his career has shaked out like this because he's never not been good. He's been really good everywhere he's been. He's just never stuck with the team for a while. So he would be a good hire. He's somebody who's used to learning new offenses, and he would be fine with working with Deshaun Watson. I'm pretty sure.
Another guy, and you brought up the name. Do you think the Browns can trade for DeAndre Hopkins?
If they can, they got to do it. Right? So, a lot of like trading for guys in the offseason is a lot about want to, like, how much do you want to do it? How much are you willing to move around to get it done? And how badly does DeAndre Hopkins want to, reunite with Deshaun, right? Part of his frustration was with Kyler this year in that Cardinals offense. So maybe he's thinking, man, I want to go back to that good old thing that I had with Deshaun in Houston, and I'm willing to make it work. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Maybe that's what Deshaun's thinking. I'm pretty sure both of those guys really want to make it happen. It can happen. You know what I mean? Like that, those are two guys Deshaun's a big enough a part of the cap space to where if he wants something to happen and DeAndre Hopkins wants to make it happen, they can figure out a way to make it happen under the cap. So, if they want to make it happen, it can happen, but it's going to take a lot of people wanting to make it happen, if that makes sense.
All right. Before I let you go, we're going to take a look. NFL wide receivers, free agent rankings. Again, the Pro Football Focus ranking. Only a couple of the top 50 ranked wide receivers due to be free agents. Number 1, Jacoby Myers, Patriots, overall ranked number 8. Number 2, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chiefs, overall ranked 33. Do either of those guys move the needle? Are you interested in either of those guys?
I would say the one free agent I'm really interested in as a wide receiver is probably DJ Chark because he fills a need. He's younger, big guy. Maybe he could become an end zone threat. But he also frees up some of what you do with Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones, so you don't have to have him running 9 routes all the time in order to spread the defense out. So I think that's probably more or less in the direction that they would want to go into. Because a lot of those guys that you mentioned are kind of technicians, and we got enough guys who can get you from 20 to 20. We need guys who are going to be able to get us big explosive plays and options in the red zone. That's really what we need. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, we've seen it this year. You can get a lot of production in between the 20s with them. The issue was with the red zone with those guys. And with explosive plays with those guys. It took a lot of long, grind them out kind of drives, even while we were throwing the ball, to score with them. Now you need some explosives and some drive finishers.
Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Awesome, man. Thank you for having me on.
All right, Quincy Carrier. Make sure to check him out. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage, always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com talking Cavs and potential trades. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers, coming off a tough loss in Memphis against the Grizzlies. One of the best home teams in the NBA are the Memphis Grizzlies. J.B. Bickerstaff talked about that tough loss last night.
They did the things we asked them to do. There were some small things that we let get away from us. Obviously, 19 turnovers, some offensive rebounds, things like that against a team like this that you just have to be careful of. But we put ourselves in great position down the stretch. They just made one more play than we did.
We talked about a tough place to play. 19-3 at home. They're on now an 11-game win streak. But what did you see from your guys at the end of that first half that carried in all throughout that second half to almost win this game?
Well, it's just the mental and physical toughness that we talked about. Our guys' desire to compete and compete at a high level. I thought they were great. I think Jared Allen makes a great defensive play at the top of the floor, down the stretch to a phantom whistle. That was a great play by Jared against one of the league's best offensive talents. The players should decide the game at the end of the day. And that play that Jared made was a game-deciding play. If we get that stop, which we should have, it's a different basketball game. It's disappointing, obviously, but we'll learn from it, and we'll try to find a way to get better.
With that, let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sam, what about the going without Donovan Mitchell? I should say that. They find a way to hang with arguably one of the best teams in the NBA.
Without question, the Grizzlies remind me very much of the Cavs in the sense that, or vice versa, both teams very young cores, very talented, very bright futures. And you think about how the Cavs did what they did in Memphis that had been riding a 10-game winning streak. As you mentioned, as JB mentioned, one of the best coaches or best teams on their home court. And it seemed to me like you forgot that Donovan Mitchell wasn't there because the Cavs played so well against a team that has a great shot to win the Western Conference on their court. Really, fought hard after being down 19 points, come back and like JB said, went down to a final shot. I thought that was an impressive, probably the Cavs' best road performance of the year came without Donovan Mitchell and came in a loss, but it is definitely, those are the kind of losses that you hold your head high after and say, you know what, we're pretty good and we just showed it tonight.
Is there anything that's going on the road? Because on the road, the Cavs have not been what you want them to be as of late. Are there any concerning signs that you see to the road losses that they've had? They're now, I think, 9-14 or something like that on the road.
The only concern I would have if I'm the Cavs right now is, let's try to take it up a notch and steal some of those wins when you have an opportunity like they did against the Grizzlies. You think about earlier in the season, they had a great opportunity against teams like the Clippers and the Kings when they were out on that West Coast swing. And the reason I say that is because, we've heard LeBron James say it. We've heard just about every NBA veteran player say it. The playoffs don't start. A playoff series doesn't start until somebody wins a road game. So you basically what that says is you'd better be able to win on the road and always have a shot on the road once you get to the playoffs, which guess what? The Cavs are presumably going this year. So that would be the concern. It's, the 9-14 record to me isn't a huge deal. If you want to play around 500 on the road, and the Cavs are very close to 500 on the road if they had, stolen a couple wins here or there that they probably could have gotten. I don't think the record's a big deal. I don't think that the way they've played on the road is a big deal. It's just in the second half of the season, you'd rather see them, turn it around and get to 500 just so that they can prove to themselves when the playoffs get here, we got to win a road game if we want to have a shot, and we know we can do it.
Let's take a look at what Isaac Okoro has been doing. He's been playing really well as of late. 6 from 6 from the field, 4 of 4 from three-point range last night. Most field goals made without a miss in a single game in his career. And he's now getting it done from behind the arc since January 1st, so 2.5, 3 weeks. Again, not a ton of shots, but he's making 62%. You'll take that every day with a guy that can play defense. What about, have you seen a little bit of progression from Okoro?
Without question. This has been his best stretch of basketball as a pro since the first of the year. You know, and like you said, you don't have to take a ton of three-pointers. The Cavs aren't asking that from him. What they do want is for him to knock down most of those he does take. That corner three is going to be open. It's just the way their offense runs. It's the way teams defend Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Mobley, and to a lesser extent, Jared Allen, who's also, you know, always a threat near the basket. That creates an opening there in the corner. Isaac Okoro, Lamar Stevens, Karis LeVert, you know, we look at Dean Wade when he's healthy. All of those forwards that are playing small forward have had an opportunity to knock down that shot. Okoro had not been doing that regularly through the first half of the season, but now that he is, you can see what a difference it makes. And not just, you know, for the team, but for his confidence in terms of how he's playing the rest of the game. Whenever you make shots, you know, you're feeling good, you're feeling energized. And it's been very evident that he's, you know, really made, obviously a small sample size, but has really made nice strides since the first of the year. And a big reason is he's starting to feel confident knocking down that three. And, you know, we saw veteran players like Andre Iguodala do it with the Warriors, or PJ Tucker's done it with a number of teams. You know, going back away, Bruce Bowen with the Spurs. Guys who play that small forward spot that can knock that down are invaluable. And Isaac Okoro may be on his way right now.
Yeah, and all he has to do is make the other team respect his outside shot and want to guard him. Don't let the other team leave you alone on the offensive end. I know you've written about this on HoopsWire. Talk to me how the Cavs feel about the development of Darius Garland.
Yeah, you know, look, they're very pleased. It's taken some adjusting for him to play with Donovan Mitchell. Not, you know, not on a personal level, but just strictly from a basketball standpoint. And Garland's still been good. You know, there have been a few hiccups here and there, but overall he's been pretty good. And it seems interesting to me that, quite frankly, most of his best games have come with Mitchell on the sideline. And there's a reason for that. It's not because he and Mitchell aren't good together. It's just because Darius Garland, the returning all-star in the backcourt, is having to learn to play with another three-time all-star, and has done an overall nice job. So, you know, the Cavs really are, you know, they feel good about Garland, and they like where he's headed, and they like where that backcourt's headed.
Yeah, it's I think it's headed towards the one of the elite ones in the NBA without question. All right, before we take a break, again, I know you've written about this. What do the Cavs need from the bench, and are they getting what they need from their bench?
Yeah, yes and no. You know, I would say, Dave, that it's kind of been uneven, the bench play. Now, some of that has to do with injuries. Some of it also has to do with, you know, they're just not getting the shots to fall on the road. So bench players tend to play better at home. That's been the case with the Cavs. And I just think that, you know, over time, once those guys get a little more Ricky Rubio and a little more success, you know, consistently in terms of knocking down shots and just kind of playing more together without the injuries, I think that they'll get it together because they do have a veteran bench with Love and Chetty, Dean Wade when he's healthy, and LeVert when Mitchell starts. LeVert goes back to the bench too. So it's a little bit of an issue, a little bit of a concern, but nothing that's, you know, kind of where you're panicked about it. I just think that the more the season goes on, I just think, and the more guys stay healthy and get healthy, which, you never know when that's going to happen. But if that happens, I think the bench will be just fine. It's not bad. It's just not been great.
Yeah, that's a fair point. They have been banged up pretty much most of the season. There's been one or two guys that haven't been able to go. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, trade deadline a few weeks away. We'll take a look at some of the proposed trades that are out there involving the Cavs. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Cavs with Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Let's take a look at some of the projected trades that are involving the Cavs. This one from the Bleacher Report, and it has the Cavs getting Dorian Finney-Smith and Dwight Powell, giving up Karis LeVert, Dylan Windler, and a second-round pick. That one is actually from Bill Simmons' podcast with Zach Lowe. So what do you think about that one? Dorian Finney-Smith and Powell, they give up Windler and LeVert in a second-round pick.
I don't mind that trade. I just think that it's almost like a trade for making the sake of one, or for the sake of making one. I just don't know that really improves things, and then you're kind of messing with the roster right there in the middle of the season or past the midway point of the season. I would say that Powell is definitely an upgrade, as far as a backup center. I just, at this point, don't think the Cavs absolutely positively have to move LeVert. Now, they are looking to, or taking calls and probably making some with Karis's contract expiring at the end of the season. But I don't think that you want to force a deal. Now, Finney-Smith is a nice player, a couple years older than LeVert. Is he better than Karis LeVert? Probably not. But that said, you do upgrade with Powell, who's a nice backup center. But do you shake up the roster for that? Are you any better? Do you give yourself more hope by making that trade? I don't think so.
All right, this is going to be the one from the Bleacher Report. It's a three-way involving the Mavericks, Cavs, and the Raptors. So the Cavs would get Tim Hardaway Jr. and Hernando Gomez. They would give up Robin Lopez to the Mavericks. They would also give up Kevin Love to the Raptors and a second-round pick in 2025 to the Raptors. So you're sending out Lopez, Love, and a second-round pick, getting back Tim Hardaway Jr. and Hernan Gomez. What do you think?
Well, Hernan Gomez was in the Adam Sandler movie on Netflix and really did a nice job. So I don't, that wouldn't be a bad thing. But from a basketball standpoint, again, are you shaking things up just to shake them up? Are you really thinking that's going to improve your team? That's a pretty big trade, especially Kevin Love, who's really struggled shooting the ball, obviously, lately. But at the same time, I don't see where you look at that trade and say, now the Cavs are all of a sudden definite finals contender if they weren't before because of this deal. So sometimes continuity and familiarity will pay dividends at the end of the year and in the playoffs. So I would be hesitant to make that deal, only because, again, just like the previous one, how much are you really improving when you make that trade?
All right, here's another one for you. And this one's been circulating a little bit, originally from Mark Stein, the Stein Report. Cavs weighing options for a three-way trade that would bring Malik Beasley to Cleveland. John Collins would go to Utah, Karis LeVert to the Hawks. That's via Mark Stein. Now, Beasley, probably a better three-point shooter and that's an area I think they probably would like to upgrade. But again, is it significant?
Yeah, if that's probably the one deal of the three that we're talking about that I say, yeah, I don't mind that deal. Now, I thought that last week when it was reported, if Isaac Okoro can continue to shoot even close to what he's shooting on three-pointers, then you don't need to worry about that. And then you keep Karis LeVert. LeVert's had a nice run since the first of the year, has been playing better overall since then. And, there's no need to bring in a Malik Beasley because you have Okoro, who's shooting threes close to as well as Beasley. And, again, you're not messing with the roster to bring in a guy who may or may not fit. And look, the thing with guys like Beasley, who I like as a player, is they're kind of, he seems like he's on his way to being a journeyman. And if teams are so willing to give him up, look, he was just traded before the season from Minnesota to Utah, and now Utah's looking to move him. I just don't know that that's is that going to be the answer, that type of player who's a journeyman or on his way to becoming one? Is that the type of player you want to trade for at the deadline? Maybe after the season. But you have to remember, the deadline deals are pretty big deals because they do impact the locker room quite a bit. And to me, Dave, the Cavs made a huge trade right before the season, getting Donovan Mitchell. And I think that at some point you need to just say, maybe we can make a very small deal, but let's roll with what we have. And I think that that's what they're thinking right now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. And along those lines, let's look at this. This is CBS Sports midseason grades for all 30 NBA teams. For the Cavs, they give them a B+. Cleveland still has the Eastern Conference second-best net rating, NBA's second-best defensive rating, and with 4 core players under the age of 27. Cavs are quite frankly ahead of schedule, and that kind of dovetails into what you said. Why would you go and get a 31-year-old, 29-year-old guy that isn't going to move the needle in a playoff series? Is that kind of the way Kobe Altman is looking at this? If I'm going to do something, it's got to move the needle in a playoff series.
Yeah, I would think so. That's what the aim of a trade would be, and then to add somebody who you think is going to be part of the core for a while. And usually 31, 29-year-old guys, they can be part of the core for a while, but it's not, as likely as somebody a little bit younger. And part of it is Karis LeVert's contract's up. So, the concern there from the Cavs standpoint is, are we going to be able to keep him and pay him what he's looking for? I don't think Karis LeVert is looking to break the bank by any stretch. So, I think that there's reality that he could be in Cleveland for a while if he's not moved at this deadline. So there are some things there that Kobe Altman has to consider, but there's also a lot that says, you know what, we're getting a B+, which is pretty accurate. So let's just keep this group together and move it toward an A with maybe some changes around the edges.
The other thing is you got to believe they're definitely one of the teams that could land a home spot, so a top 4 spot in the Eastern Conference. That is certainly within reach and should be the goal at this point, I think. Do you agree?
Absolutely. The fact that they were there pretty much for most of last season, in the top 6 anyway, top 5 or 6, and then Jared Allen injury, a couple other injuries really impacted that. But right now you're so close to getting that 4th seed, that should be your goal, is to get a home court advantage in the first round. And if not, to stay in that top 5, just because you want to feel good about yourself going in the playoffs. You don't want to fall down to 6, 7, 8 or mess around with the play-in tournament. At this point, the Cavs can really believe that, you know what, we have a shot at having home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs for the first time since LeBron James was here, and that's 4 or 5 years ago now. I think that shows that the franchise is taking some major steps.
Sam Amico, hoopswire.com, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Sam.
All right, thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, make sure you check him out, hoopswire.com. All things Cavs and NBA, always really good and insightful stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. See you back here tomorrow at 4. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.